This is Interplay, Conversations in Music. I'm Michael Shapiro, your host, and welcome today to my special guest, internationally acclaimed in every way, Elliott Forrest. Hi, Elliott.
Hey, Michael, always good to see you.
Great to see you. You know, many people know the voice of Elliott Forrest, sometimes the face. Voice on WQXR, there you are, on WQXR, or on various other places online and television, Lincoln Center, so forth. But I want to talk today about Elliott Forrest Productions and what you have done as a producer, including something we did together, and hopefully we'll do more things together when the lights come on again. So
let's hope so.
Let's hope so. So meanwhile, as you know, I've been talking to you about radio, the 1920s phenomenon being the milieu where people go in their own homes to listen to music.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? And look what's happened. But I want to talk back. I met you 10, 15 years ago. I don't remember the year, at an American Symphony Orchestra League conference when you had a booth, when you had just started, I think, doing your video presentations with orchestra. And could you talk about that? And then we worked together in creating an original story of yours called the Babbling Orchestra. But let's start with you. For years, you were a voice. You were a voice in WNCN, you were a voice on A&E, on the radio, all kinds of things. QXR now for many years. But when did it come into you? I know you have an acting background, but when did it come into you to be a person who would produce, direct, and create?
Michael, actually, I grew up in a relatively small West Texas town, Midland, Texas, and I was 19 years old when I walked into a bank and I said, I think you should give me some money. I'm going to do a show in the park. I didn't even want to borrow it. I just wanted them to give it to me and be a sponsor. And they did. And I produced Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in the park with my friends. I bought the rights. I did everything right. Went to what was an MTI or whatever it was. We rehearsed in basements and backyards. And at 19, I had 1,000 people come see a show in the park. And I've basically been recreating that sort of feeling of taking charge on a show, conceiving of something, and then seeing it through to the very end for 40 some odd years. I don't even call it a detour. It's a huge part of my life to be a broadcaster, but my degree was in theater as a director. And I came to New York to be involved in theater and to produce and direct and just never made any money at it. And so was on radio and then 12 years at A&E Television. And then I got a call from a friend who was producing a concert in 2005 at the Hollywood Bowl and said, you should take the lead on it. I'm too busy. And so it was really that concert that brought me back after decades of really not producing and directing on a really big scale. It was the last 90 minutes of Götterdämmerung with John Mauceri and the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra. It was a big success. We got a big review and everyone loved it. And then I came back to New York and I said, this is a business. I'd like to add visual elements, add theatrical elements, not just projections, but other theatrical elements to symphony concerts. And have been doing it ever since, including most recently being on tour with Itzhak Perlman.
We're going to get to Itzhak Perlman shortly. I want to go back because Mauceri is also a friend in common. I was on the phone with him yesterday. He's just done a concert when the lights were on with the Royal Scottish Orchestra and Alan Cumming of the pre-story to the Nutcracker, where Drosselmeyer and his brother come from. And he made his own arrangement. It was fascinating. When you did Götterdämmerung with John, and I remember when that happened, did you have fireworks at the end? Like the fireworks that they have at the Hollywood Bowl?
No. As a matter of fact, and I had a partner at the time, a business partner, who said, are we doing confetti and fireworks? And it was really set the stage for the way I've worked ever since, which was I let the music tell me what to add theatrically. And as you know, Wagner wrote the stage directions for the Ring Cycle, and there it didn't say fireworks and confetti. So, but there was fire, real fire, and I can send you pictures. But yeah, we put propane on top of the Hollywood Bowl because Wagner wrote in the distance you can see Valhalla going up in flames, and it's like, okay, let's have that go up in flames.
All
So it
right.
was extremely theatrical and very exciting. But again, I always want the music to tell me what to do rather than trying to add on anything that is. I mean, I hope that my concerts are fun, but I don't do it just for fun. I try to amplify the music with the theatricality.
Let's talk about after Götterdämmerung. So you're on QXR at that time, I think, in 2005, right? And you're doing going out to do Götterdämmerung. Do we then jump to considering Matthew Shepard, or are there things in between that I don't
Oh
even
no,
know
there's
about?
huge. A lot. I've had a long. That was 2016 was Matthew Shepard and
Right.
directing for PBS and being on tour with them. So no, there have been dozens of shows in between. The One of my biggest collaborators has been the Little Orchestra Society. Right after I got back from doing the Hollywood Bowl, I met with a number of orchestras, and the Little Orchestra Society hired me to do a gala of theirs at Town Hall, and then several shows at Lincoln Center. They actually came to me and said, "You got an idea for something? We're thinking Americana." And I knew that we were a couple of years away from the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, I guess. And so we did a big Lincoln concert at Lincoln Center, and it was really great. It was great fun. I got James Earl Jones to be the narrator. We also did another program after that called Music Takes Flight, about man's interest in flight from Icarus through the space program. And Sigourney Weaver was the narrator for that. We did that both at Alice Tully and Lincoln Center. So there were a lot of shows in between in which I've added, again, theatrical elements, set pieces, in some cases costumes, and usually, almost always, some level of projections.
That's marvelous. I'm curious about the Little Orchestra Society work, and I know with Babbling Orchestra, is there a different approach when you deal with concerts for children versus concerts for adults?
Um, I'm not sure. You know this, Michael, that unfortunately in our business in classical music, things tend to devolve into two different categories, and it's not usually young and adult. It's
Right.
usually serious or pops. And we kind of don't have any other terms for that, which is really too bad
Yeah.
because I think a lot of the things that I've done have been not serious, but not pops. They've been great fun, but not pops. And then some of the pops things have had some serious undertones as well. So I'm not sure what to call it. But I've done a couple of things for children. I just did, it wasn't so much for orchestra, although I had classical music. I did my own adaptation of The Emperor's New Clothes, which is now out on video and on YouTube. But I had kept hearing The Emperor Has No Clothes in the news stories. And I thought, what's the original story? What's the actual original Hans Christian Andersen story? So I
I'd
got as
rather, by the
close as
way, I'd like to say I'd rather see your Emperor's New Clothes than our current president in that
well,
final scene.
fortunately, he's not in the theater business
Thank God.
anymore right
Well,
now. Or
let's hope
maybe he
he's,
is. Frankly, maybe he is in the theater
I think
business.
he is, regrettably.
Um,
But getting back to Emperor's
so
New Clothes.
yeah, so I got a translation of the Hans Christian Andersen, made a couple of editorial changes, very few, frankly, and it did that. But I think my stuff for kids have always my favorite stuff as a parent has always been like the Muppets or Pixar, where there's always a little something for the adults, and the
Yes.
kids aren't getting it, but
Right.
there's a little something because somebody else paid to go see the movie. So yeah, it's and Little Orchestra was not always they used to have an adult program, and many of the shows I did were actually not for kids. Music Takes Flight and the Lincoln, certainly young people were invited, but it was actually more for their adult audience.
You're talking about the things for children with something for adults. Our children, I think, are somewhat similar in age. Did your kids watch on Saturday morning with you and your wife, Pee-wee's Playhouse?
Yeah. Well, I would watch it by myself. I'm not sure my kids watched it or my wife, but I've seen Pee Wee. Yeah,
I mean,
loved Pee Wee.
it's amazing that that was a Saturday morning show for years, and looking back on it, it's pretty phenomenal what he got away with.
I know, and if you
But
can go on YouTube and see Mario Cantone's old shows for kids too.
oh
It's
my God,
Mario was a little eye-opening as well.
a little bit. Let's go back to one project with which I had personal experience because I journeyed to Dallas to see you producing with your buddy uh, Craig Hella Johnson's Considering Matthew Shepard, which, as you know, I think as a choral piece, I find phenomenal. I've told that to Craig on multiple occasions. And when I first heard Conspirare, when I came to the rehearsal, and I came into the hall and I heard that sound with every singer perfectly in tune, it gets the best singers. It reminded me in a way of hearing the Vienna Philharmonic or the Vienna Philharmonic for the first time, playing Schubert.
Yeah,
Not everything. They don't play
yeah.
Ravel well, but hearing their effed repertoire, when I heard it for the first time, I just fell back in a great feeling. And when he had that first chord in the Matthew Shepard piece, I was just floored. Now, that was a production that was done at the Moody Performance Hall, which is a high-tech hall. I think
Yeah, it's
holding
where
about,
they shoot Austin City Limits, the long-running television show.
yeah,
Was where we shot it in Austin. The Moody, I think, was the where you saw it in Dallas, I think.
that's correct. I was there
Right.
for many reasons in Dallas that week, and I was able to see it. And then I was with you when Craig conducted the chorus at the interment of Matthew's ashes at the National Cathedral.
In
So,
Washington.
yeah,
Yeah,
that
so
was
stirring, right.
unbelievable. And by the way, I was there before the pandemic hit, and I went into the crypt and I saw the plaque.
Oh,
He's in the same area now as Helen Keller,
right.
his ashes.
Yeah,
So
for those who don't know, and it's a
let's
part
go.
of history
Let's talk
now.
about that.
Yeah, it's Matthew Shepard was a gay young man in Casper, Wyoming, who was taken out to a field, beaten horribly, tied to a fence, and left for dead for 18 hours. And it was a turning point in the gay rights movement. It was really the first time in America that America really stood up en masse. Clinton was president. Ellen DeGeneres had just come out. Will and Grace had just started on the air within months of that, ahead of time. So really, it was the first time a gay man was killed, and America revolted emotionally, and it was a turning point, not only in the gay rights movement, but ultimately the hate crime act that is now a federal hate crime act is named in part in Matthew's name, along with James Byrd, the African American who was dragged by a truck in Texas until he
It's just
was killed.
atrocious stuff. And it's to
Terrible.
me, it's all Nazi redux. Every piece of this, it's the same hatred, same awful things.
Right.
But let's talk about your visuals.
Oh,
Is what you
or
brought
that.
for that.
Yeah. So the backstory is that in 2016 they had already workshopped or it's an oratorio if you haven't seen it or heard it, and you can hear the music. It's on Spotify and Google Play and everywhere. And the video is on. You can probably link it to this conversation if you want. I can give you the link. But the PBS special I directed is part of that as well. But I got a call in 2016. They had workshopped it already. They were going to shoot it for television, and a friend of mine who had done the staging ahead of time said he thought I was the right person to direct it for TV. And then I got involved right away, and it's stunning. As you said, the music is amazing. Conspirare has been around for more than 20 years. Full disclosure, I'm on their board now, so
Okay.
I don't get paid or anything to say that they're phenomenal, but they're phenomenal.
They are.
And it's a beautiful work. And we've been on tour. We did it twice at Ravinia. We played in Laramie. We literally went back to the scene of the crime and performed this all over the country. And now some 40 other productions have been around the world. And we're just now about to release a video of All of Us, which is the big chorale at the end. And the audio mix is from, I don't know, 25 or 30 different productions of different singers. And you see people from all over the world singing in it.
Well, I think Craig
So
created
I
a
think
great
it'll
piece.
be, Yeah, and I sort of insisted, or as the director, I took the lead on saying that I felt like we needed projections for not only the television version but the touring version, because it's while it's Matthew's story in somewhat of a linear narrative fashion, it's still not completely easy to follow because it jumps around a little bit. And so I felt like putting it in time and place and having the emotional connection of having landscapes and pictures of Matthew
Ah, this is where
and
I was going.
pictures of the killers.
Yes.
Yeah, and all those other aspects of projections would help the storytelling.
Let's go to that specifically. We can use this as an example, or we can speak of other pieces. You're given a piece of music. How do the projections project not only the story, but the underlying emotion of where we're going? That's what I'm most curious about, your creative process. And where do you get the materials?
Well, I mean, the first part is the first part, which is what is the emotional arc of the story? That's first and foremost. Where are we coming from, and where are we going to emotionally? And then from the narrative, what can I do to reveal that narrative, both contextually and emotionally? And sometimes projections and theatrical elements are sometimes they're a background to what's going on in a foreground. Sometimes they are the foreground and they take center stage in what the audience is watching. And sometimes it's counterpoint. So I think about all those things. I think, do I want to counter what's going on stage? Do I want to amplify what's going on stage, or do I want to take the stage? And so I just try to sort of do an interesting mix of those three things, so that I know I'm helping the story along. What I never want to do, particularly with an orchestral work, if I take an orchestral piece and it's a symphony orchestra and there are no soloists and it's projections in the back, which I've done many times, I never want the audience to forget that there's an orchestra, that there's a 85 or 100 real live people on
Yeah.
stage. I light the orchestra. I never turn the lights off on the orchestra and say, hey, watch the movie. And that's a different experience, and that's happening now, where you can watch Back to the Future or Raiders of the Lost Ark or E.T. with a live orchestra, which I love, but
Or
that's not the experience I'm going for.
Frankenstein,
Or Frankenstein, which
which
I've
which
done. I've done your Frankenstein.
we're going to talk
Yeah,
about arts rock
I
next.
produced that.
You sure did. And let's talk
Yeah.
about arts rock. In addition to your broadcasting, you're producing, you're creating new venues and all kinds of wonderful things, like Matthew Shepard, like Gitta Demirel, like Babbling Orchestra, which we'll get to. You have something called an entity now in its how many years? Arts Rock has been a long
We're in
how
our
long?
11th season in Rockland County in New York.
Arts Rock is an organization that I'm very pleased to say that I go to many of its concerts and support your activities as a very small donor and participant. And
Thank you.
you do everything. I have heard at Arts Rock, Simona Dinerstein play in a very intimate setting, Kreisleriana of Schumann. I've heard songs of protest in which folk singers, well-known ones like Mr. Chapin and Nora Guthrie and all kinds of people, Tom Chapin, have appeared singing classic Woody Guthrie and other great songs of protest. I've heard recreations of great, I should say, pop rock music. I've been to New Orleans Fest, whatever you call it, where we have Cajun food and dance
Mardi
to
Gras.
Mardi Gras and dance to Cajun
in
style music in Nyack.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very, and then you have the children's programming, which I look forward to bringing my grandsons when I see them again after this is over. In any event, it's a very wide panoply of events that you put on at Arts Rock. Right now, you're like everybody else on hold, although you do put things up on video. Where do you want, and I ask this of every participant Interplay in my conversations in music. I ask everyone that's been on so far, many of your friends, we're here now. We've been through this. We're going through this. God willing, there will be a vaccine or herd immunity or whatever we need to get out of this. Where do you want Arts Rock to go in 21, 22, 23? It's just a great thing you do.
Well, thank you for that. It started pretty organically. One of my board members once said that every community needs a hospital, needs police, needs a fire department. They also need their own arts. And that's really the idea of it, is that, Nyack, New York is 45 minutes from Times Square. But having said that, not everybody can afford to go, have been able to afford to go, has the wherewithal to go to the Met or Broadway. So the idea was to bring professional performing arts to our own community at an affordable price, in a way that even if you can't afford it, we give away a lot of tickets. It's not a very big organization, and by design. And as a matter of fact, probably if it were a really large organization with our own venue, we probably would have gone out of business during this lockdown.
Right.
But we're still here, and I hope to just continue the mission of professional performing arts in and around our community for a diverse audience. And
you're also in
I
an
hope to keep
interesting
going.
town where you are a part of it. You're in an interesting town because Nyack has a great collection of actors, writers, long history, performers. Edward Hopper originally grew up in that town. His house is a wonderful small museum commemorating his memory right on Main Street there in the main part of town. And it's got the view of the Hudson. You live right close to, you can walk to downtown from where you live.
And
you should. It's good for you. And Nyack is an interesting town because there's great interest, and your concerts are extremely well attended and very intimate.
Well,
but
we have
also,
a number of venues. We have a number of venues that we use. One is, you were at one that was like 100, but we also have one that's 500.
Yeah.
And I know that when I put on a concert and 500 people come, before and after, they're going to go to restaurants, they're going to go to bars. Of course, this is both pre and post pandemic, but it's part of the economic fabric of any community to have these kinds of events, and that's why we do it.
So James Galway, Lady Jean Galway, played it at your Arts Rock twice, I believe.
Yeah,
and I was at the second one with Michael McHale.
It took me 10 years. It took me 10 years to get him to come here, and then like a year later, 2 years later, Lady Galway calls me up and goes, "We need a run out concert. We're doing one in your area. Can we come do another benefit for you?" It's like, who says no to that?
Yeah. And what a magnificent pair of people they are, not only as musicians, but as human beings. I so enjoyed spending that day and night with them at the rehearsal and the performance and then dinner afterwards. Oh my God, it was just a culmination of many years of admiring their art. Really, it's something else. And I thank you for that.
I'd forgotten all the good work we've done. I so appreciate this walk down memory lane.
I've been to about, we've been to about at least a half a dozen, if not more, of Arts Rock.
More.
As a finale to this, and then we're going to talk about the future. I want to talk about a piece you and I wrote together. You said to me at one point, I don't know how many years ago, you said to me, "I wrote this text, and maybe you look at it. Talk about how you wrote that text and why you did, and then I'll jump in and fill in some of the rest."
Well, I literally felt like, I've been doing all this work for orchestras and not that much for young people. And people kept coming to me and going, "Tubby the Tuba, Peter and the Wolf. There's nothing else." And so I thought, well, maybe I should write something. And I literally started with Tubby the Tuba. Maybe I'll start with a piccolo. And so I started to write this little story that, in a way was a bit of an allegory. The story of a young woman piccolo player who was tired of playing alone and ventures into town and discovers that there's an orchestra there, but it's just a cacophony. They can't talk to each other. Every section of the orchestra speaks a different language. And so it became a metaphor for society, that people not getting along and not being able to play well with others. And so it came out pretty quickly. It's in rhyming verse. I was pretty happy with it. And I said I had this piece, and at the time you were the head of an orchestra, and I said, but there's no music to it. Maybe we should find somebody. And you said, how about me?
So I wrote the Babbling Orchestra, which can be seen and heard on babblingorchestra.com, with Diva Goodfriend Coven as the piccolo soloist. She was, for over 30 years, principal piccolo of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra and a soloist in our performance. It has video that is created by elementary school students from the Chappaqua school system. It was our hope in future years, and we're still going to do it, Elliott. We're going to get out there to go to other locales in which we can get the kids to draw the videos of what happens in the story. It was narrated by your one and only Elliott Forrest, brilliantly, and I conducted the Chappaqua Orchestra.
We saved on a lot of salaries that way.
Oh God, did we ever? And that's a story.
Composer, conductor, narrator, writer. Right.
We did pay Diva and the orchestra. That is true.
Of course.
But the kids, well, we won't talk about the kids. In any event, we have great art on that video, and Sir James Galway has given it a very nice send off, and Lady Jean right on the website endorsing the piece, which is very endearing. Now here we are. If you had your druthers, and the ghost of Ronald Wilford came to you and said, Elliott, I will promote you throughout Europe and America doing this. And you said, but Sol Yurok is representing me. What would you then do? What would you want to do next? And then next, and then next. Any ideas?
Well, it's been quite a gift, frankly, to come back to producing and directing in a much bigger way than I ever imagined, and not in a world I ever really thought about when I was younger and doing theater and was focusing so much on plays and musicals, to be a part of the classical music world. And then to get this oratorio was a gift, and be able to direct that as well. I love being on the radio, and I think that will continue, but I think that there are more and more pieces that I would like to direct and produce. There's some interesting new technology that has come my way recently that I'm interested in toying with, and I'll just give you a little piece too. Is that there's a back of the drawer story that sounds horrific, which it is. The very first child abuse case to go to trial in America, and the way it really came about is a great American story. It's a 19th century story. It's kind of amazing. Actually, it involves people like P.T. Barnum and the people who started the ASPCA. Wow. It's an amazing ragtime kind of story where you may not know the story, but all the people involved, and I've been working on that for a while. So if I don't finish this and get this up on its feet somewhere before I die, it would be a shanda. So
well, let's do it.
I have projects. I got things backed up I hope to get to.
If it's theatrical enough, you do know an operatic composer.
I've thought about it as an opera. I can't tell if it's a play or an opera or a musical or a movie. Or a shadow play or a radio play, which I'm involved with. Right?
I'm counting as you're going along.
I know. You got to figure out the platforms.
Elliott Forrest, thank you for joining me. I'm Michael Shapiro, host on Interplay Conversations in Music.